Hi everybody, Reaper here. Just thought I'd go over the world climate change numbers now. I was just curious. There's a lot of countries out there that don't have trees, and we would have to be the excess for that in order to in order for the world to be able to absorb all the CO2 that we create and is created naturally. So, anyway, you see the numbers up here. There's 1990 right here. There's 2005. There's 2017. There's 2021. For this, for this model, I'm just going to use just the 2021 column. That's really the only one I was interested in because um, they it's the closest to what we're doing and the closest year to us, therefore being the best example, right? So there's all the numbers anyway, and I totaled up this column. Now their number here is 37,000, almost 38,000 or whatever. My number, I came out, it was a bit different, but I just totaled the whole column for in the Excel spreadsheet here, and it came out to 39 1,649.12 um, metric tons of CO2 that every country puts into the atmosphere per year, and that was in 2021. So the total CO2 emissions from humans on the planet, from every human on the planet, okay, is 8 to 16 tons is the average per person, okay? Um, Now in the states, it's closer to 16 tons per person, and but for the rest of the world, a lot of the Google searches were telling me it's closer to 4 tons. So for this equation, we're going to use 10 tons as an average. Okay. So what I did was I took the population in 2021, which was 7.8 billion. I rounded that up to 8 billion to cover any increase in the population to this point. And so the equation reads 8 billion people times 10 tons of CO2 created to calculate to calculate the tons, which is 8 billion times 10 tons by all human beings in the world is 80 billion tons. Then we need to convert this number to metric tons so that we're all talking the same language here and there's no confusion in what we're talking about here. So we took the metric tons and multiplied that by 0.907. So that equation looks like this: 80 billion times 0.907, which is 72 billion 560 million metric tons. Okay, so now we're into metric tons. So if we add the 72 billion 560 million metric tons with the 39,542.66 metric tons, we get the sum of 72 billion 560 million 395,042.66. Okay. Basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to find out what causes CO2, which is fossil fuels and us and the planet naturally. And so we all took grade 10 science. We all took photosynthesis and those subjects. So we all know how that works. Plants breathe in CO2 and exhale oxygen, and they do that every day. The total amount of CO2 created by fossil fuels and human beings on the planet is 72 billion 560 million 395,042.66 metric tons. Okay? So, what filters CO2 out of the air? Trees. So I wanted to know what the top 10 countries were for trees, and here they are: Russia, Canada, Brazil, United States, China, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, Dominican Republic, Australia, Bolivia, and Mexico. So added up, that is 1,968 um, uh, billion trees, because this is in billions, right? A number of trees in billions. So that translates into 1,968 billion. 1,968 billion. The amount of CO2 that one tree will consume is 21.7 kilograms. So the equation looks like this: 1,968 billion times 21.7, which is 42,706,600,000,000, or expressed like that in kilograms of CO2. Okay, that the top 10 countries will remove from the air from trees. So we have to convert that to metric tons. So you have to divide that by 1,000. So that brings us to 42,706,600,000. Okay, now that's the total amount of CO2 in metric tons that trees alone will absorb out of the top 10 countries. So wetlands, then now we have to address wetlands because they absorb 10 times or 20 times the amount of CO2 that trees do. So wetlands absorb 81 to 216 metric tons per acre of CO2 from the air. So we'll average that out to 160, okay? And that's the average that we'll take. It's right in the middle. Converted to metric tons, there are 2,400 wetlands covering 630 million acres in the world. Okay, so 630 million times 160, right, which is the average that we took for the metric tons per acre, right, gives you 100 billion 800 million metric tons of CO2 that the wetlands alone will pull out. So, rainforests absorb 1/4 of the world's CO2, or 25%. The Yale School of Forestry determined that all tropical forests combined filter about 25% of the world's carbon, with the Amazon basin absorbing 127 billion metric tons per year. Okay, so 127 billion. Okay, so we counted the rainforests in Brazil, and we also counted, so it wouldn't be fair if we didn't take that off, right? So what I did was they account for 60% of Brazil's trees. So I went 60% times 302, which is right up here. That's in billions of trees, okay? And then, which came out to 181 billion 200,000 times 21.7 gave me this number, and then I converted this number to metric tons by dividing by 1,000, which is 3,932,000 and 40,000. Okay, so let's go over the numbers now that we have them all. Now we can go over them, right? So 42. This is 42,706,600,000 trees. Okay, just trees. That's metric tons. So 42,706,600,000 metric tons is the capacity that the trees have to absorb CO2. Okay, per year. Wetlands have the capacity to absorb 100 billion 800 million metric tons of CO2 in 1 year. Okay? The rainforests have the capacity to absorb 127 billion metric tons of CO2 per year. Okay? So, then when we add all that up, we get 270,506,600,000 metric tons of CO2 that the trees have the capability to clean from the air every day or every year worldwide. Okay? So we calculated out for the human beings and fossil fuels, we create 72,560,395,000 or 395,042.66. Okay, the Brazil correction, which is up here that we had to add back in, we'll add that to that, and you come up with 76,492,435,042.66 metric tons of CO2 created by human beings and fossil fuels put together. Okay? So now we have both of those numbers. So if we subtract 270 billion, 506,600,000 metric tons of CO2 from, and we subtract 76 billion 492,435,042.66 metric tons of CO2, we get 194 billion 14,164,957 metric tons excess that the planet could pull out but is not required to. Sorry, just letting that sink in. So let's do that one more time. 200. So the total extraction capacity of the planet is 270 billion 506,600,000 metric tons of CO2. Okay, the total created by human beings and fossil fuels is 76 billion 492,435,042.66 metric tons. The difference between that is 194 billion 14,164,957 metric tons excess that the planet could pull out but is not required to. Sorry, doing that again. Anyway, also, I'm going to put this as the nail in the coffin, okay? So, also, there's 0.4 of 1% of CO2 in the atmosphere, okay? It's actually 0.0375 of 1%. But the oceanic and climate change people always round up to make the situation seem much worse for some reason. This translates into, and we're going to use 375 here, not, or 0.0375 of 1%, not 0.4, okay? So this translates into 375 parts per million in the air that we breathe, okay? Total. The human race is responsible for 10% of the pollution or CO2 in the air, which translates to 37.5 parts per million. Okay? So, out of the 375 parts per million in the air we breathe, humans create 37.5 of those parts per million, or 0.00375 of 1%. Okay? So if you do the subtraction on that, and you go 375 parts per million total, humans cause 37.5 parts per million. It gives you a total of 337.5 parts per million in the air. Okay? So that means if we weren't even here, humans, industry, fossil fuels, anything, the planet, just thinking reasonably here, but the planet would be creating 337.5 parts per million naturally. And it makes sense because we're responsible for 10% of this 375, that 375 right there, which translates into 37.5, which leaves 337.5 parts per million. Where's it coming from? It's got to be coming from the planet. I'm just trying to think reasonably here, right? As a reasonable person, right? So, anyway, so we should also keep in mind too that at 0.02 of 1%, okay, if we go down to 0.02, plant life starts to die. So if plant life starts to die, that means we start to die because we depend on the oxygen that plants produce. Again, we all took grade 10 science and we all took photosynthesis, and we all know that that's true. It's been taught to us since grade 10. I mean, probably earlier than that. But anyway, 0.02. And the increase to 0.04, which is really 0.30375 of 1%, okay, which translates into 375 parts per million, okay, is they just rounded that up this year over the last 30 years. 30, 30 years. So it took us that long to make that increase from 0.03 of 1% to 0.04 of 1%. So, my opinion, climate change is a pile of crap. We're paying for something. Well, I don't know what we're paying for, but it sort of seems like we're lining the politicians' pockets or friends of the politicians' pockets, somehow getting kickbacks from this money. But with these numbers right here, you can't say anything else. But climate change is a pile of crap. So sorry, Justin. It just isn't adding up anymore, buddy. Like, look at those numbers. I got all those numbers off of a Google search. Google searches. Those are your numbers. So you're not gonna tell me now that climate change is for real. And everybody else that watches this video shouldn't think climate change is for real either. Right? So anyway, folks, that's the video for today. Hope it was helpful. If it was, please circulate, especially this one. This is huge because I've seen people, scientists argue, yes, it's true. Yes, climate change is true. No, climate change isn't true. On the other side, the non-governmental scientists, they always tell the truth. Anyway, so, but I've never seen anybody do this before. The actual numbers, and the actual numbers tell you right there. I mean, it's right there. You can run the numbers yourselves. Do your own Google searches, like I just did, and find out. But this is right, and I don't know. It's a lie. I don't know where the money's going, but it's not going to climate change, that's for sure, because there is no climate change. Anyway, folks, hope you enjoyed the video, and circulate this video, please. Again, just hit the like button. It helps to circulate it around, and take care of yourselves and each other.